welcome to Crime and Court. My name is Heather, and this is another episode in the deep dive that I am doing in the truth behind the Making a Murderer, the series that's behind, the Netflix series. We're looking behind what was, portrayed on screen, and we're actually looking at court documents. We're reading through the trial. At this point, we just read through the opening statements. Unfortunately, we don't have video or audio that I know of, so we are going to have to, you unfortunately are going to have to listen to my voice. I apologize, it's not the greatest, but here it is, and there we are. So anyways, so I want to introduce you to the site. It is called, it is just foulplay.site. And then if you go, I don't know if that works exactly, but it's Foul Play. The name of the website is Foul Play. And they have, so what's great is they have all of the court documents, all of the exhibits. They have everything on here. So it is easy to find things when you need it or if you want to look through it. What I'm going to be doing is kind of using this as our guideline, because it tells us they have a whole index for the jury trial, and we're going to see. So we're still here on February 1st. I'm sorry, on day 1, February 12th. And the full document is here if you want to look at it. You can download all of these, and they have links to where everybody's testimony actually begins. So you can find it very easily. The site is great. So what I mean to say is I'm going to use this as a guideline. I'm going to show you who all of the witnesses were for the state. We're not going to read through all of the testimony, unfortunately. It's just too much. But I will always link in the description below where I got it, where the testimony that I'm reading, so you can follow along, and you can also just go straight here and find it yourself. It's very easy. So with that being said, please don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe, share this video with someone who might be interested. It's great to help the algorithms. All right, so now that I have all that housekeeping stuff out of the way, we're going to continue the trial of Wisconsin versus Steven Avery. It began, day 1 was February 12th, 2007. We just, in the last episode, did the opening statements. And we're going to actually read now from the first state's witness, which is Michael Halbach, Teresa's brother. So Ken Kratz is going to be doing the direct examination and Dean Strang the cross-examination. And I'm only going to do some parts of, oh, come on. Whoops. This file is so large. I'm afraid that it's going to just crash my computer while I'm streaming because it's a $5,000. Oh, I wish it was it's a 5,000 page, 5,000 page PDF. It's got all of the testimony. I did download that from somewhere, but you can also download it like day by day or all together. I went in and I made my own bookmarks because I want to go through this and only show like certain portions, but you guys are welcome to go and read it all. So let's get started. Again, we have day 1. This on the stand is the state's witness, Michael Halbach, the first witness, and this is Teresa's brother. I skipped through a bunch of it. It's all like background, like she grew up on a farm. She helped with the dairy cows, but mostly she helped with taking care of the little sisters that she had. All right, so, sorry, what's the question here? Let me scroll up a little bit. So you mentioned that Teresa was involved in the photography business. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Michael Halbach. Yeah, Yeah, through college, she developed a passion for photography and hence why she declared that as her major. I would say her sophomore and junior year, she worked at Bay Park Square Mall in Green Bay at Picture People. I like the name of that, Picture People. Taking photos of children, mainly families. After she got done doing that, during her last semester at Wisconsin Green Bay, she started her internship. Internship with Tom Pierce of Pierce Photography in Green Bay, doing many of the same things, taking pictures of children, families, and also doing weddings on the weekends. So she continued working with him, and then later on in 2002, she started her business, which she named Photography by Teresa, which continued up until Halloween of 2005. Question. Now, you indicated that you are familiar that at least one of her clients was Auto Trader magazine. Is that what you told us? Yes, that's correct. I think it was October 2004, she started working for Auto Trader magazine as a way to supplement her income for her personal business since she was, come on, Paige, since she was just starting out with her own business. She wouldn't always have clients. So, yeah, just as a way to have some steady income, she got this job with Auto Trader magazine to take pictures of vehicles in people's yards that they were selling themselves. So, basically, Ken Kratz uses Michael Halbach to get in a lot of pictures, a lot of exhibits, a lot of things. So, I'm not going to go through all of that. Oh, here. Okay. So he continues questioning on, was your sister married? No, she's not. Who did she live with? She lived with a friend of hers from high school, Scott Bladorn. Bladorn is how you pronounce it. He lived in the upstairs of the apartment or of the house she was renting from my parents. How close was this to your parents' house? Down the road a short ways, 1/8 mile, roughly 1/4 mile, not too far. Okay. Did you ever have an opportunity to see or talk with your sister as she either went to work for the Auto Trader magazine or as she went to work at her own studio? As she went there? Yes. In other words, were you familiar with how she dressed to go to work? Why didn't you just ask that? Yes. Can you tell us about that? This is taking so long. So this file's so big. I'm sorry, guys. It's going to be lagging every time I'm like trying to scroll through it. All right, so she would always dress professionally, especially when she was going to her professional photography business. You know, black pants, a nice shirt, and if she happened to be doing Auto Trader that same day, she would go in those same clothes. But if she wasn't going to her job that day, she would dress comfortably, not necessarily in professional clothes, but nice clothes nonetheless. Might be a nice pair of jeans and a nice shirt, or, you know, maybe khakis and a sweatshirt. All right, so he gets in some more exhibits. Then he continues, once again, after your sister's appearance and after investigators began contacting you specifically and your family, these items were found in her personal effects and turned over. Is that correct? That's correct. All right. Can you tell me who Pam Sturm is? Pam Sturm to me would be my first cousin once removed. She would be my grandma's sister's daughter. Okay, the involvement of Pam and her daughter, Nicole, after your sister was missing, could you describe that for the jury? You said her involvement? Yes. Pam Sturm was the person who ended up finding Teresa's vehicle on the Avery salvage yard. I recall coming home that day after I had been with my brother driving in her, being inside my parents' house crying and my mom telling me that we found the vehicle. Or Pam found the vehicle, Pam and her daughter Nicole. So I guess that would be her involvement. If he wasn't even there, like, why are they asking him this? This is all hearsay, basically. Like, he found out from somebody else, all this stuff. So I don't know why that's necessarily admissible. But all right, so all right. Let's go back just a little bit, Mike, if we can. After your mom, I keep reading off of here, and I forget I gotta do it here so you guys can see it on the screen because I have it blown up so it's big. All right, let's go back a little bit, Mike, if we can. After your mom reported your sister missing on the 3rd of November, how was it when you were informed of that? On Thursday, November 3rd, I was working. I got a call from my mom that afternoon at about 2 or 2:30, wondering if I knew where or if I had talked to my sister in the previous, since Sunday. And I said that I hadn't. And so I went on to call one of Teresa's good friends at her work and asked her if she had known where Teresa could be, because it was completely unlike her to go somewhere without telling anyone, especially a family member, a good friend, her roommate, or her boss. So I guess how is he allowed to just keep talking? This is all narrative. So I guess after we made those calls, it became very evident to me that something was seriously wrong, and I expressed that to my mom. Then shortly after, she was in agreement. Obviously, she knew something was wrong, just like everyone else. Did your family ask for some assistance, and did you receive it from some of Teresa's friends regarding searching for her? That is a compound question. In searching for her, all we had to do was make a couple phone calls to some of Teresa's friends, and they would call numerous people. We needed help passing out posters on Friday, November 4th, and also doing searches by car on Saturday the 5th, and doing searches by foot a few days following that. So whenever we needed help, we had help from Teresa's friends, family members, community members, anyone who wanted to help, who had time, would help us out in searching for Teresa. Who is Ryan Hilligus? Ryan Hilligus was Teresa's ex-boyfriend. They were together a few years and then were off a few years once they went to college. And he basically organized most, or probably all, of the search efforts that we did for Teresa. Him, along with Scott Blodorn, did the majority of getting people together and telling people where to go to search for Teresa. So the roommate that she's been living with for 8 months, that I don't think she knows very well and isn't really close with, and also the ex-boyfriend, are both heading up all of the search efforts. That makes sense to you guys? It doesn't make sense to me, but that is what it is, according to Michael Halbach. I was calling him Matthew. All right, so did I finish that? Yeah, they did the majority of the searching. Okay, so question. I ask you to refer back to this photo. Can you tell me what exhibit it is again? Exhibit 5. Okay. Can you see your sister's physical stature? But if you can just verify for us, was Teresa in good physical condition? Yes, she was. She went to a gym. I don't know how regularly, but she had a membership at a gym and seemed physically fit. Yes. Mike, I think you talked about on the 3rd meeting with your family, and on the 4th, really, the citizen efforts for Teresa's search kind of ramped up, but can you give us any more details on that, is what I think that's supposed to say. I have dyslexia, so that's probably how I would have written it. I don't think I really do have dyslexia, but with my condition, all my diseases and medications, it makes me screw up words and things. So yeah, I screw up the order of things. I forget how to spell things that I used to know. It's awful. Anyways, all right, I don't mean to change gears here. All right, so yeah, the day we reported Teresa missing, that Thursday, we got a call from a man named Jay Breyer, who offered his services at Youth Educated in Safety, which is a missing persons organization. He offered to make copies and make up a missing persons poster. So we took him up on that offer that night, finalized the poster, and then the following afternoon we had got copies made. He had made the copies, and around 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon was when we were meeting with whoever had the time and the vehicle to drive across all of northeast Wisconsin to put up these posters, which basically said, missing person, Teresa Halbach, height, weight, what she was wearing that day. So that's what happened on Friday afternoon. And I'm going to skip through all of this. I don't remember. It's just not important. Mr. Halbach, let me ask you this. Did you try to recreate from the 31st of October routes that Teresa may have taken? Yes, yeah. So those were our main areas we wanted to put up these posters, as well as to search by vehicle and by foot, because we could trace her whereabouts to, a certain location. That's where you want to focus most of your efforts. So that's what we did. All right, perhaps you answered this, and I apologize if you did, but do you recall how many thousands of these posters you distributed? I guess I can't recall specifically, but it would be, probably a couple thousand. All right, now we're going to hear from Mr. Hilligus a little bit later in the trial regarding the specifics of the missing persons investigations, but did those search efforts include actually walking around or looking in roadways or ditches? Yeah, that Saturday morning, the 5th, that morning, it was about 7 a.m. and a group of volunteers met me at my sister's house, and we set out by vehicle to basically trace the routes that she may have taken that Monday. And certain people were given different areas, not necessarily the places she definitely traveled, but perhaps she drove down to Milwaukee to meet with someone or drove up to Door County. So we had people driving in those areas as well. But myself specifically, I went with my brother to the places where and the routes that we thought for sure she could have taken, Since we were her brothers, we can get it in her mind better than anyone. So we drove over there. I can recall specifically driving down Highway 147, getting out, looking down embankments where if you would drive by casually, you wouldn't be able to see down there. So we thought maybe she had gotten in an automobile accident, was trapped, unconscious, whatever it may be. So we wanted to do what we could to eliminate that possibility. So, we looked wherever we could, drove around as many roads as we could, side roads, back roads, whatever, just looking for signs of her vehicle or Teresa herself. And until that call came, or until the news came on the 5th that Teresa's vehicle had been found, was that your hope that there had been some accident or something? Yeah, from the start, I think it's just the way my family is. If we're strong, optimistic, also, realistic. But yeah, we hoped to find some sign, and we hoped we would find Teresa alive. So when we found her vehicle, it was good because we were getting closer to finding Teresa. So we were happy to find the vehicle. But we didn't find Teresa, so that half the goal was missing. We didn't accomplish half the goal when we found that vehicle. All right, Mike, I had mentioned at the early stages of the presentation of this case, in fact, to the jury, about meetings that you had with law enforcement, meetings you had with me individually throughout this case. Have you been kept informed as to the developments and the evidence, not just what was found, but the evidence that was going to be presented at this case? Yes. We had always were informed in advance of anything, whether it be a news conference, whether it be information that would be submitted to the courthouse and available to the media shortly thereafter. We would always be aware of what was going to be said in the media or what not said in the media. And in advance of every court hearing, we have been kept informed of what we would hear that day, just so there were no surprises, so we could prepare ourselves emotionally for those events. That includes the physical evidence that is going to be presented at this trial? Yes, that's correct. The last question I have, Mike, and I'm going to apologize in advance as to the insensitivity of it, but at any time after the 31st of October, had you ever seen, spoken from, or heard from your sister Teresa Halbach? No, I have not. And then he gets some more exhibits in, and then I'm going to skip through some of Dean Strang's cross-examination. All right. So question. This effort to retrace her steps on October 31st, did that get going, Mr. Halbach, pretty much right away that evening that you all reported her missing? Yeah. We we had talked about where we knew Teresa was on the 31st, what appointment she had, where she was supposed to be before then, where she was supposed to be after then, the following days and the days following as well. Okay, on the 31st, were you able to nail down appointments? Yes. So, do you think it was that Thursday night that you figured out that Auto Avery Salvage was one of the appointments, if you remember? I don't remember exactly if it was that night or if it was the next day or it was one of those two. Either Thursday night or Friday morning, the 4th. Yes. Okay, and at some point, pretty quickly, the media all got interested in this. Am I recalling that correctly? Yes. Was it Friday already on the TV? They were talking about the Avery auto salvage or flying over it, that kind of thing. I don't recall specifically myself and, seeing the media involvements, saying Steven Avery, but I know that they reported on the missing persons case involving my sister that Thursday night. Oh, right away, Thursday night? Correct. And then Friday, and I know by Saturday there was a lot of media coverage? Yes. Not that you were watching, but you were out. That you were just sort of aware of it. Yes. Did you have access to her computer passwords or account information for, like, her cell phone, for example, or bills, that kind of thing? Cell phone, yes. Computer password, yes. She had shared that with you at some time earlier. I did business work for her, website graphics. So, I just knew it. I just knew it through that. So you knew it through that, correct? Because you would have a reason to get on her computer to help her with her website. Well, I didn't have to go on her computer, but I had to connect to a web host. Sure, just to put stuff on her website. So, okay, I'm nodding like I know what you were talking about, and I really don't. But the point is, you had access to her password information so you could check her cell phone bill. I never did. I don't know. So since I never did, I wouldn't know if I had the right password for her cell phone bill. I knew, okay, her password for her voicemail. And that's where I was going, I think. I think on Thursday evening, November 3rd, somebody was able to get at her cell phone records on the computer, but that was not you. I don't think on her computer, no. Okay, and you didn't have her voicemail? I said I did. I did have her voicemail password. You did have her voicemail password. Okay, did you check her voicemails? I did. Do you remember when you did that? It was probably Thursday evening, early evening, after your mom, filed missing persons, yes. Okay. Okay, so I take it you were at work earlier that day. Yes. Correct. And the missing person report was sort of at the end of the day, 5 or something. Correct. Were you familiar enough with Teresa Halbach's everyday stuff to know what she carried keys to? I mean, yes, I think I would have an idea of what keys she would have. Yes. Okay, let's start with a house that she and Scott Blodorn were sharing. Bladorn were sharing. This was the older farmhouse. At one point, it was a farmhouse. Okay. It is actually on the Halbach farm or just next door. It's next door. My parents' home, the house on and the land. Okay. It's next door. My parents' home, the house, and the land. Whatever that means. Okay, but it doesn't share a driveway at all. Yeah. It has its own driveway. Separate parcel, but next door. Correct. Can you see the two houses from one another? You have to look through a line of evergreens, and there's a big shed a little further back, but you can see it through the trees, yes. But they are next door neighbors, essentially, although it's a rural area. Correct. Okay, and I take it there was a house key to the house. Go ahead. Yes, there was. Do you know whether there was a separate garage key? I believe that's correct. Okay. I would imagine there was. And do you have any way of knowing whether Teresa would also have keys to your folks' house? I don't think she did. You told us the Toyota was the only car she was driving, so she didn't have keys to other cars, as far as you know. Correct, she didn't. No other keys. Swipe card for the gym. I can't recall if she specifically had a swipe card. Those little cards that you put on your ring, your keychain. Okay, and if you know, was she someone with like a lot of people, I guess, have had some doodads or charms and that kind of thing on her keychain? I don't ever recall her having any of that. A lot of fancy stuff on her keychain, no. Okay, the gathering was at Grandpa's house on Sunday, October 30th. That's correct. He had a birthday, right? But his birthday is on Halloween, or was on Halloween, and they celebrated it that weekend before. All right, so for his birthday, correct. And then I think were there, if you know, had she had plans to go to a Halloween party the Sunday night right before that? I believe so. Early in the evening, she was helping me with a wedding, shooting a wedding video. After that, I think she would have went to a Halloween party. I believe that's correct. Okay, Saturday night, October 29th. Right. Yeah, it would have been later on in the night. I wonder if she met someone there, maybe, and was going to meet up with them later on the 31st. All right, so question. Let's just sort of help the jury with that. You're a videographer. You're in the video business. Correct. So not only would she be a photographer for weddings, but you also videotape weddings as a business or a side business at times. Well, that was the only one that I had. That was my first time, and I haven't done one since then. Okay, but the two of you were helping each other out, right? Okay, right. I didn't notice one in the picture, whichever number it is, where Teresa is standing next to her Toyota when she got out of the camera. We've all seen that photo. I didn't notice there, but did she ordinarily carry a purse? I don't recall her having a purse, but, well, I can't say for sure. That's okay. That's all right. How about, did you notice when she a jewelry person, bracelet, or was she a jewelry person, bracelets, necklaces? Not a whole lot of jewelry really at all. Maybe a couple of rings. Not bracelets though, or necklaces, probably not too often. How about earrings? I don't recall her wearing earrings very often. That's all I have. Thank you. Okay, so that's the end of Michael Halbach's testimony. So up next, so next on that first day of trial, they had opening statements. They had Michael Halbach on the stand. We read through most of his testimony. Tom Pierce was a photographer that worked with Teresa. She interned with him, and which was a college, and he liked her so much, and he offered her a space in his studio for her to work and build a business for herself. And so she was doing that as the side business, photography by Teresa, which is that was her main business, and then her side business was Auto Trader to supplement money. All right, so Thomas is going to basically testify that I'm not going to give summaries on everybody, but I did read through his briefly, or skim through. He basically just says the last time I saw her was the 31st, or last time I heard from her, whatever, and things like that, little foundation things that are kind of boring to read through, but they usually become a theme, so we don't need to really read through all of them. All right, and then up next on day 1 was David Beach, which is Teresa's cousin. He was involved in the community search around the properties, and then he also spoke with Steven on the property. He went up to the one trailer where Earl was working, and Earl brought him over to talk to Steven for a little bit. I don't think anything of evidence was really said, but it was just one of those, he went and observed him, so of course they're going to call him. All right, so let's move on to day 2. So our next witness is going to be Angela Schuster. And Angela Schuster she works for the Auto Trader magazine. She employed Teresa. She was her boss. She spoke, she didn't necessarily always speak with Teresa, but she definitely did communicate. They stayed in communication. I don't know if they talked on the phone, but because they would send over information. But we're just going to read through a part of hers, and then we'll get to Dawn Pliszka, who also works for Auto Trader, and she took the booking that Avery did. So we're going to learn a little bit about the booking process and, Auto Trader as a whole, how it runs, and then we'll talk about what happened with Steven, and it's interesting. So that's my background screen. All right. Let me jump to Angela Schuster. All right, that needs to be centered. So, more exhibits and stuff. Now, Miss Schuster, can you tell the jury, after a digital image is taken by one of your photographers, one of your employees, how does that physically get into the magazine? Can you just tell us about that process? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen again. All right. Sure. The photographers hand in their discs along with their paperwork. Their discs are then downloaded at the office onto our software system and then sent over to our production department that places the ads into the book. So she takes all the pictures, she puts it on a disc, and then she sends the disc over there. All right, so when the photographer like Teresa was scheduled to take a shot or a photo for Auto Trader, how would that typically be set up? How would the picture be set up? Yeah, how would the appointment be set up? By phone, by email, by mail? All right. Was there an employee, somebody in your office other than you, that would typically make those appointments or set up those photo shoots? Yeah, the staff in the office handle most of the phone calls that come into the office. Would it be fair that the support staff, the receptionist or secretaries, would have more contact with photographers than you would? Yes. Do you know a woman by the name of Dawn Pliszka? Yes. Who is Dawn Pliszka? Dawn Pliszka is was our receptionist in 2005 as custodian of the records for Auto Trader. Were you able to determine Ms. Halbach's first trip to the Avery? I always want to mess it up. My brain wants to say something else. Avery Auto Salvage Yard. No, not by photo. We had the actual appointment information, but the photo had been purged from our system. The court reporter didn't hear that. She repeats herself. I understand that, but what I'm asking is, do you also keep records or calendars or things of that nature to recreate appointments or things like that with your photographers? Our customers' information is kept in our database by phone number. Were you aware that Steven Avery or under another name was one of Auto Trader's customers? Not before this, no. That's what I'm asking you. After this, were you asked to find that out? Yes. And did you find that out? Yes. And could you tell us about Steven Avery's contacts with Auto Trader? Well, he would phone in his requests for the photographer to come out to his property to take pictures. Sorry. Ooh, sorry. My mouth is getting so dry. All right. Well, he would phone in his requests for the photographer to come out to his property to take pictures. All of our customers are given the option to prepay or pay with the photographer when he or she gets there. They would normally pay when the photographer got to this property. To this property, she's saying. So they normally paid on delivery, cash on delivery. All right, so by the way, how many does each photo shoot cost? How much? How much does each photo shoot cost? I don't know where I got many. We have several different packages, so anywhere about from $24.95 to $59.95. You said Mr. Avery typically paid the photographer, paid in cash when he was there. You have to say yes or no. Yes. All right. And again, back to the earliest question, Ms. Schuster. Were you able then to determine the first time that Halbach had gone to the Avery property through those records, or is that something that you couldn't recreate? Yes, we were. And what was that date? In June. Was that the June 20th photo that we saw? Yes. Do you know how many times Ms. Halbach was asked to go out to the Steven Avery property? With the June, well, there are 5 times that she was asked out there. 4 times she was out to his property. That's not counting the 31st of October. Is that right? Correct. And again, exhibits 11 through 16 are the photos or the products from those trips. Is that correct? Yes. Now you said that your photographers generally would either contact you by phone or perhaps by fax or email. Do you know specifically how Ms. Halbach made her connections or contacts with Auto Trader? Through fax and phone. And so if the customer had made an appointment, even a last-minute appointment, how would that typically be relayed to the Halbachs? Oh, to Miss Halbach. Sorry. If it was a last-minute appointment, then the staff would write up the customer's information on we have what was called a shoot or reshoot form. Gather as much of the information from the customer and let the customer know that the photographer may or may not be out the same day depending on his or her schedule. Once again, gather the information, then they call the photographer and ask if they had been to the area or if they had possibly fit that shoot into their day. And then depending on if they get a hold of them or what or what they say, either a photographer will call the customer directly or the office will call and let them know if they can make the shoot. So if somebody's asking for a same day photo shoot, sorry, I'm trying to itch the back of my shoulder here. All right, so if anybody wants same day photo shoot, they will call out to the photographers and see if they can get one. Basically, that's all that's saying, is that's their process. All right, I think, do I have more of hers that I wanted to read? Let me look. Here's cross-examination. Duh. All right, so this is by Jerry Buting. Attorney Jerry Buting is cross-examining Angela Schuster. All right, so good morning, ma'am. Good morning. We haven't actually met before, have we? No, we have not. I want to take a step back a little bit and clarify just how some of these procedures work, if we may. Auto Trader headquarters is typically in Hales Corners in the Milwaukee area, right? We're a satellite office. Yes. Okay. In Hales Corner. Okay. And out of that office, you run photographers all over the state, right? Yes. Or correct. Yes. And the state is kind of divided up in regions, and one of these regions is the northeastern region of Manitowoc, Sheboygan, Brown County area, right? Yes. And one of the contacts with the photographers is in those more distinct regions, not right in the Milwaukee area, are done by emails, fax, and phone. Answer, yes. And they also have overnight packages that they send. Okay, so in Ms. Halbach's case, for instance, did she come down and interview for the job in Hales Corners? No, I actually went to Green Bay and interviewed her. Okay, and that was about a year or so before October 2005. Yes. And was that the only time you actually met her? Yes. So she never met her except for that interview. All right, so from that point on, for the next year, my water almost went down the wrong way. To your knowledge, did she ever come down to Hales Corners? No. So all of her, well, for instance, let me ask you this. Do you know whether she ever met Dawn Pliszka, the receptionist? Not that I'm aware of. Okay, so really her communication was with your office by phone, fax. Did she use email with you? She did. Okay, and most of those communications were fairly brief, I take it. Yes. We got a call for you, or we got a job for you. Here's the information, name, address, phone number. That's pretty much it. I think the staff had more conversation with her. How was your weekend? That sort of thing, but for the most part, probably brief. Small talk kind of things. Yes. And your communication with Teresa Halbach was probably less even than the staff who were answering the phone. Yes. Okay. Now, what you would typically do when... I keep reading on the wrong side. I'm sorry. It's bigger here, so it's easier on my eyes. I can't help it. Okay. Now, what you would typically do when somebody would call in, or when the telemarketers were based in Florida, I think, is that right? Yes, they were at the time, and what they would do is they would comb newspapers or other publications for people who already put ads in it and call them and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you put an ad out in your publication as well? Correct. Yes. Sort of cold calls. Yes. Right. And in fact, that's, if you know, isn't that how Auto Trader made the contact with this George Zipperer later the same day on October 31st? It is a telemarketing call, right? Yes. Okay. Now, so what your office would do is it would either get the information from your telemarketers saying, here's an address, phone number, we want you to go take a photograph of, or that person, customer would call in or use the internet to call in themselves and say, we want this appointment, right? Yes. And then your office, someone in your office would prepare some kind of form to fax to the photographers their appointments. Yes. And who did that? Was that you? That was Dawn. So Dawn would do that. Did you hear any of those records with you, or do you have any of those records with you today? Any of those kind of appointment sheets? No, I did not bring them. I'm going to show you one. I'm going to show you one so we know what we're talking about. Like, did you bring one by any chance? No? Okay, that's great. I have my own. So let's show the class. All right, so Attorney Muting continues. Mark this Exhibit 18 for identification. Now, this one, if I understand it from a couple months earlier, we'll just talk about some more recent ones in a minute. But if you could just identify, just for us, what this is. That was the photographer's detailed appointment report for that day. And it's been marked as Exhibit 18 now, right? Yes. Your Honor, could I use the Elmo? Sure. A little hard to see because this is a white sheet, but showing you what's up on the screen now is that's what we just referred to as Exhibit 18. Yes. And at the top, there is a fax line that says from AutoTrader. It's got the fax number that you would fax to the photographer, in this case, Teresa, yes. And then it's also got a faxed, sorry, I'm like falling asleep with my own reading. No, it's, I'm just really fatigued and tired. All right, so then, and then it's also got a fixed back one from Teresa's, correct? Right. Now, this one has a lot of handwriting on it. It doesn't come to the photographer, in this case Teresa, like that, right? No, it doesn't. It would initially come with just the typed out information of date, name, address, and phone number of the right column, correct? Correct. Yes. And then you would get these from not just Teresa, but from all the photographers, and you would go through them in terms of figuring out what to pay them, right? Yes. So these were regular records that you use in your business to determine how to not only keep track of appointments, but pay the photographers. Yes. And that Teresa would do. You become familiar with her customers in practice, right? Yes. Which was that she could take these forms and then in handwriting she would put along the side, done, 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 no pay, done, pay, these kinds of things. Yes. And then at the top it would, if we could see the very top of the little bit, in this instance she circled the number 8 and she would put 6 completed and 2 payment, right? Yes. And then she has +1 hustle. Yes. And then P form. What's that? The P form is a form that photographers use when they get a shot that might be a referral or a second shot at a customer's home. And so how they are numbered, it starts with a P. That's why we call it the P form. Anybody's allergies acting up? Because mine certainly are. I never thought I had allergies my whole life. And autoimmune disease, my own allergy. I'm my own allergy. All right. Okay. All right. So this form, then you would figure that you would pay her 8 for 8 shots plus the hustle. Correct. And we'll talk about the hustle in just a minute. But now, normally, Teresa's practice, as all of the photographers' practice, would be that you would not get this form back from them until after the day's appointments had been completed. Is that correct? Correct. So that, for instance, let's take October 31st, or actually, let me clarify something. The deadline for getting your ads into the magazine is what? Mondays and Thursdays. Okay, so Teresa's day for that part of the state, which was Monday, you could be expected to get that information to AutoTrader by the very next day in order to make it into the deadline. Yes, the way she would do it, in fact, you provided discs, little digital discs, camera discs for each photographer, right? Yes. And she would go around, take all of the pictures for you, collect the paperwork from the customer, put it in the overnight FedEx, UPS, whatever, something like that, and overnight it to AutoTrader in Milwaukee for the next day. Yes. Okay. And along with the money? Yes. Okay. So from the customer, Teresa would collect. She would take the photograph. She would also fill out a form that included what a copywritten part should be description of the vehicle. All right, so vehicle, yes, and the money and all that would go to you overnight, yes. But even before that arrived in your offices, she would fax this kind of sheet to you at the end of the day. Yes. Right now, there's something kind of unusual about October 31st of 2005. And the way that works wasn't there. And the way that works wasn't there. What? I don't know. We actually received a fax from Teresa earlier in the day, okay? And I think you received it, if you recall. It was a short after midnight on the 30th, that is, very early, 12:30 or 12:18. I'm in bed by like 9:30 or at the latest. Very rarely do I see 10 o'clock now these days, but autoimmune disease, whatever. All right. So, and in fact, you received it, if I recall, it was shortly after midnight on the 30th. That is, very early, you knew, 12:30 or 12:18 a.m. early morning hours of the list. Right. Yes, correct. And that was faxed from her. So it was just odd that she sent a fax so early in the day, right back to AutoTrader. All right, where did I leave off now? And I lost my spot. Come on, I don't think we read that yet. She would take the photograph. She would also fill it out. Yes, and the money and all that would go to you overnight. Yes. But even before that arrived in your office, she would fax this kind of sheet to you at the end of the day. Right, yes. Right now, there's right now, there's something kind of usual about October 31st, 2005, and the way that works wasn't there. So it wasn't she sent it at the very end of her day. She was not following her own routines and practices. We all have them. All right, so yes, we actually received a fax from Teresa earlier in the day. Okay. And in fact, you received it, if I recall, it was shortly after midnight on the 30th. That is very early, 12:30 or 12:18, early morning hours of the 31st. Right. Yes, correct. And that was faxed from her? Correct. And it involved the shoots for that upcoming day? Yes. That hadn't been. Appointments hadn't been. Why am I having such a hard time breathing right now? I'm sorry, guys. I sound terrible. I should just scrap this, but I'm already an hour in. Alright, so let's just keep going. Let's power through. Power through. If I need to stop, I'll stop. Alright, so, and that was faxed from her, correct? And involved, he says correct, and it involved the shoots for that upcoming day, yes. That didn't even, appointments hadn't even been made yet, or kept yet, right? No, if it was faxed back to us, it would be anything that she had completed. Okay, but the one that you received on the list, correct me if I'm wrong, actually contained the appointments for the day of the 31st, did it not? No, we don't print their appointment reports or their actual leads until 7 a.m. in the morning. So on the 31st, on that Monday, her leads would not have been printed until after 7 a.m. Okay, so she couldn't have had them at 12:30. So, oh, sorry, that wasn't a question. That was a statement by the witness. So she couldn't have had them at 12:30. See how much of a difference it makes when you don't say it like a question? So the one that she sent back to you at 12:30 a.m. was from Friday or Saturday or Thursday. Okay, but in it included some information about appointments that had been actually rescheduled for the upcoming week. Yes, photographers do reschedule appointments as well. Okay, now you mentioned that moat. I want a castle with a moat and a dragon. Alright, so now you mentioned that most of the leads for photographers come from AutoTrader itself, either the telemarketing or customers who called in. Yes. About 90% of the shoots that the photographers do come from AutoTrader, so the photographer. Yes. But there's something else, maybe 10% on average of photographer shoots are called hustle shots, right? Yes. And those are where leads come not from AutoTrader, but from the photographer himself or herself. Yes. And there is an incentive for photographers to do that because they get paid more on hustle shots. Don't they? Yes. What was the pay for the AutoTrader for an AutoTrader lead typically? Typically $8.75. So $8.75 for one photo. One photo. Okay. And what about the hustle shot? $18.75. Whoa. Okay. And when the photographer would schedule the hustle shot, it would not be on your list of appointments that were faxed to the photographer the morning of each day. Whatever you said. AM, right? Correct. In fact, your office would not even know about any hustle shots unless and until the photographer sent that information back to you at the end of the day. Isn't that right? Yes. And for instance, let's take this one that's up there. She specifically says 8 out of the appointments that you gave her, your office gave her, were completed, right? Yes. But there was an additional one that's not listed anywhere on the sheet, right? Right. It's probably handwritten on the bottom. Well, let's look and see. Okay, that would be considered the hustle, the one that's handwritten. Yes. Actually, we would not have considered that a hustle. A hustle shot is confirmed with the office. That was a rescheduled appointment that she had taken that day. Okay, so the hustle shot is not even on the list or on this form yet. It's a it's a 3 us. I don't know. That's what it sounded like. It's a 3 us. It does not. That's what the court reporter heard. All right, so okay, in fact, that was often Teresa's practice, is that you didn't know. For instance, you didn't really care on this particular form when you get this back. You didn't care about the information from those hustle shots, right? Correct. Now my throat's all messed up. Okay. Excuse me. What you cared about in making sure that when the FedEx came the next day, that's when you needed, the information on the name, address, photo, copy information for those hustle shots, right? We like to have them on the forms, but they don't often write them on there. Very often, yes. And in Teresa's case, she often didn't write, right? I would have to look at her sheets to be sure if it was often or not. Okay, I'm going to let you do that in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to get a few other things out of the way about the way this business works down first. Repeat customers are very common for Auto Trader, right? Yes. In fact, you like those kinds of customers, right? Yes. The first time someone comes in, you set up an account for them, correct? Yes. And then you can either be billed or they pay as you kind of approach from that point on, right? Right. We don't bill. They will pay when the photographer comes out, or they can prepay. Okay. And Mr. Avery was one of those repeat customers, was he not? Yes. You mentioned it was a little unclear. You mentioned 4 times that he had been there. Then you mentioned 5, counting starting the June with going up through October 1st. That was actually 6 times that he had used your business. Isn't that right? October 31st would have been her 5th visit to his property. Well, let's do the exhibits still up. Are they up there? Exhibits 11. You said was a June 20th shot. Do you see that? I have to find 11. Yes, that was June. Okay. Exhibit 12 was August 22nd. Yes. Exhibit 13 was August 29th. Okay. Exhibit 14 and 15 were from the 19th. I'm sorry, September 19th. Is that right? Yes. And then the last one you have up there is October 10th of 2005. That's exhibit 16. Okay. So that's 5 that you have right there, right? 5 through, yes. So the 31st of October would have been the 6th visit, right? Okay. Okay. And your records had Mr. Avery's address correct. Your office records. Yes. An open account that would have, oh my God, I can't do this with myself. I can't even read this. I'm driving myself crazy. What does he say? All right. So, as an open account that you have, correct? I cannot read. It's too tiny for me. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger. How's that? I mean, it's big, but I can't see, and it's making my eyes go wonky, so I'm not reading well. Sorry about that. All right, so as an open account that you have, right? So they have an account in their system. It had his phone number, right? Yes. And in fact, you had more than one phone number associated with that particular account, right? I do believe so, yes. Now that the name John Doe, that also was a name that was used on a prior visit to Teresa to the Avery salvage property, was it not? I'm not sure. I'm going to show you Exhibit 19. See if you can identify that. Exhibit 19. Okay. It's another one of her fax reports. Appointment sheets. Yes. Okay. If you look at the very first name on the list there, the court reporter couldn't hear. Say it again. Tom Jonda. Spell it out. Okay. That's correct. Continuing on. Sorry. And an address of 12930A Avery Road, correct? Yes. And that's the very same address and phone number that was given by Mr. Avery when he called in your office on October 31st, right? Yes. And so your office knew that this Jonda was associated with the Avery salvage property. I'm not sure if Dawn had recognized that at all. The phone numbers are different, so that's why another account was created under B. Jonda. But the very name of the road is Avery, correct? Correct. So that's a little bit of a hint that it's associated with Mr. Avery, right? Sure. All right. So that's good. We'll stop there for now for Angela Schuster. So that was Angela Schuster. The next and we're on day 2, by the way, of whatchamacallit? The jury trial between Wisconsin versus Steven Avery. All right, so no, what am I looking for? So Angela Schuster, we just did. And next we're going to listen to Dawn Pliszka. She works for Auto Trader magazine, and she's the one that took Avery's booking. So we'll listen to her. I'll read through her. So first, Dawn has to sit through a proffer for the judge. So there's no jury in the room. This proffer it's a proof of evidence. It's like an offer of proof. Offer of proof is what it's, I think, stands for. And they have to... It's like she's going to testify to what she's going to testify to, if that makes any sense. So the jury's out of the room, and she's alone with the lawyers and the judge. And basically, this is for the judge to decide if the evidence or whatever her testimony is going to say, if it can come in to trial and for the jurors to hear it. So they do this proffer before the jury comes in, and so all of this right now is not going to be in front of the jury so far. Dawn Pliszka. Day 2, February 13th, 2007, state's witness, Dawn Pliszka, and she is being questioned by Attorney Kratz. Ms. Pliszka. Ms. Pliszka. This is not your testimony before the court, but this is, before the jury, but this is simply retrieving from you some very narrow information about a conversation that you had with Teresa. Do you understand that? Yes. You were a receptionist with Auto Trader during the fall of 2005. Is that correct? Yes. This is driving me nuts. I need to move that over a little. Okay. Yes. And what kind of relationship did you have with Teresa? In other words, did you and Ms. Halbach have occasion to discuss matters of a more personal nature? Yes, we did. During the course of those discussions, did Ms. Halbach ever describe for you a contact or incident that she had with the defendant, Steven Avery? Yes. Could you describe, first of all, the words that she used, and then will you describe the circumstances surrounding that? So first tell us what she told you. After she was out there around October 10th, it was like about a week or so after that, she had stated to me that he had come out in a towel. He meaning whom? Steven Avery. had come out where? She didn't specify. She just said that he had come out just in a towel. All right. Did Ms. Halbach describe for you anything else about that? Any other details about seeing Mr. Avery in a towel? I just said, really, and she said, yeah, and she said, yeah, and she laughed and just said, kind of, ew, Okay, and you said, kind of what? Ew. Ew. Yeah, just that. This is ridiculous. This is what they want to bring to trial. I guess not in a positive way. Not in a positive way, no. Did Ms. Halbach, or was she seeming to describe a specific event? In other words, was she remembering the event when she was describing it for you? Yes. All right, so that was the end of that. Now it's cross-exam. Who's doing cross? Dean Strang. All right, hi. Hi. Do you think this was a week or more after October 10th? Yes, that I talked to her. I don't know when the incident exactly was. Okay, but you're probably talking to Teresa Halbach October 17th or sometime shortly after that. Yes. She did not say that this happened on October 10th or any specific date. She did not specify the date, no. She didn't call you to tell you that this incident happened. No, not specifically, no. It just came up in a conversation. You were chitty-chatting with her? Yeah, And the reaction was, ew? Yeah, it was unfavorable. Yeah, and then she sort of laughed it off. Right. And this was 15 seconds of conversation. I would say yes. How long was the phone call, roughly? Another probably a couple minutes at that time. So what sorts of subjects do you two cover in those conversations? Probably just work-related. I don't really remember all the details of the conversation. Just remember her saying that. Do you remember whether she called you or you called her? I think that time she called me, she had a question on one of her photos, I think. Okay, so she had some more immediate work purpose for the call. Yes. And the two of you got sort of chatting, and this is one of the things she brought up. Right. And she did not give you any sense of time on when this occurred? No, she did not. All right, so redirect by Kratz. You know what? I'm going to skip through until, here. This is the court's findings. All right, so you said that the conversation took place a week or so after October 10th. Yes, so now the court, the judge, is asking the witness on the stand directly. All right, and is it your understanding that October 10th is the day that she was describing that this happened? I really can't say for sure. All right, do you know, or so you don't know if she was talking about a specific visit to Mr. Avery's property on October 10th or at some previous unspecified visit? Yeah, I would not know for sure. And do you remember how the comment or what prompted the comment, what background conversation led up to it? I don't really remember, no. I just remember we used to talk about different things that had happened during our day that were unusual or funny or different customers and things like that. So, all right, you are excused from the court. Thank you, Judge. All right, so I'm not going to read through all this, but basically he rules against all that coming in. As you can see, it was very unsupported. There was no real foundation on it, and it's total hearsay. So they didn't bring it in. But this is done Pliszka's real testimony in front of the jury. Now we're going to read through. And again, I'm not going to do all of it, just some portions of it. All right, so here is Don Pliszka being questioned on direct by Attorney Kratz. Again, so that's, if you don't know, if you're looking at the thumbnail on the very far left with the biggest head, that's Ken Kratz. All right, so Ms. Pliszka, I want to direct your attention to the fall of 2005 and ask if you can tell the jury how you were employed at that time. I was a receptionist at Auto Trader. And what were your duties as the receptionist? I sent out the photography leads. I took incoming phone calls, sent out t-shirts, mailed out catalogs. As part of that employment, did you have the privilege of knowing a young woman named Teresa Halbach? Yes, I did. Could you tell the jury, please, how you knew Ms. Halbach? She was one of our photographers. She started just a little after I did, so we were fairly close. Ms. Pliszka, I'm going to direct your attention specifically to October 31st and 31st of 2005. Ask if you were working. I want to ask if you were working on that day. Yes, I was. Do you remember about what time you started work? I started at 7. 7 in the morning? Yeah, yes. At or about 8:12 a.m., do you recall receiving a call that day? Yes, I do. And could you tell the jury about that call? Please. It was from a man. He said that he wanted the photographer who had been out there before. He was selling a minivan and he needed her to take photos. Did this man identify that name, what name the photography job would be under? I couldn't quite make him out because he was very hard to understand. The closest I got was the initial B. How is he hard to understand? I don't know. All right, so this man said that he wanted the photographer who had been out there before. Did he identify the name of the person? No, he did not. Did he provide you an address where he wanted this photo to be taken? Yes, he did. Do you remember what that was? I don't remember the exact number, but it was something Avery wrote. If I showed you a document from that morning, would it help refresh your recollection? Yes. I have now handed you what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 7. Tell the jury first off what it is. This is a photo shoot lead. It's for a same-day appointment, which we don't normally do, but if the photographer is able to, we could have written them up and sent them to them. So whose handwriting is on that form? That's mine. Would that form have been filled out at the same time that you received the call from this person? It was actually filled out later after I had left a message for Teresa to see if she could make it out there that day. But does that sheet help refresh your recollection as to the information provided by this man? Yes. What was the address that was given for the photo shoot? It was 12930A Avery Road. Now, when this man said that let me start again, remind me of the specific language the man used in requesting the photographer. He had wanted the photographer that had been out there before. Did he say why he wanted the same photographer? Because he had a minivan for sale. Was a phone number provided? Yes, it was. Could you tell us what the phone number was, please? And it ends in 8715. Now, did you know the district of the area from whom this call had come? In other words, what photographer you were going to assign to do this shoot? Yes. How did you know that? They were assigned by location. When you would type in the system, it would automatically pop up the photographer's next available date. Who was the photographer that had that district? Teresa Halbach. I think that you had said that same day appointments are unusual. Is that right? Yes. Can you tell the jury about that, please? Normally we have a 24-hour notice for photos, but sometimes if someone wanted to make a deadline and the photographer was in the area, we would leave a message for them and then they would go out to the person's residence if they could make it. Ms. Pliszka, I'm now going to direct your attention to approximately 9:46 a.m. and ask if you tried to call Teresa at that time. Yes, I did. Could you tell the jury about that call, please? I wasn't able to get a hold of her, so I left her a message saying that someone said I'm sorry that she had been out there before. I couldn't find a record of him in the system, but if she could make it today, that would be fine. Otherwise, I had scheduled it for the following Monday, which would have been her next available appointment. Were you notified, Ms. Pliszka, any time later that day that Ms. Halbach was able to make that appointment? When I came back from lunch, there was a note from Angie Schuster that it said that she had wanted me to fill out one of these lead sheets and fax it to her because she would be able to make it that day. She meaning Ms. Halbach? Ms. Halbach, yes. Finally, Ms. Pliszka, were you able to and did you in fact speak with Teresa Halbach later that day? Yes, she called me at 2:27 and we talked. Who? Teresa called me at 2:27 and we talked for a little while and she said, yeah, I'm able to go get that photo. By the way, it was the Avery brothers and I'm on my way out there right now. So 2:27 p.m. she told you that she was on her way to the Avery property. Yes. Let me ask you this, Miss Pliszka. How do you remember that call? I remember because I looked at the time because she didn't normally work. I think past 1 and I thought it was kind of late for her to be going out there. So I happened to look at the clock at that time. So, all right. Just as an aside, do you remember what else you guys talked about at that time? Hold on. Sorry. She needed UPS labels, and when I was telling her about my son going trick-or-treating, so you remember that being Halloween? Yes. Finally, Ms. Pliszka, after that call, after you hung up and concluded that call with Teresa, did you ever have occasion to talk to her again? We tried to get a hold of her on, I think, Thursday morning, but we weren't able to. Let me ask that again. Did you ever talk to Teresa Halbach again after that time? No, I did not. All right. There was an objection there. All right. So we'll move on to cross with Dean Strang. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Judge, could you make... that's an aside. You didn't read that. All right. So, did I say Buting? Jerry Buting. Yes. Jerry Buting, who is on the far right. The biggest head, well, I don't know if it's bigger, but he's taller. The taller head on the right side of the thumbnail that I have, or image that I have up there. All right, so we're going to keep going. This is cross-examination now. So you mentioned that your duties are answering incoming calls. Yes. Calling out to the photographers and assignments. Yes. Also faxing out these appointment sheets. Yes. You actually prepare them because sometimes yourself. 2. Yes. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. Let me do that. Okay. And how many photographers do you work with? Oh, she says I'm no longer employed there. And then there's a bunch of non-important nonsense. All right. And how many photographers did you deal with at that time around the state? So around the time when she was working there in 2005. She says probably around 6. Okay. And most of your communication with them was by email or fax or phone. Mostly by fax and phone. Mostly by fax and phone. Okay. Yes. I did. In fact, did you ever meet Teresa Halbach? No, I did not. So she has all this personal information about Teresa, and Teresa's just sharing all this stuff willingly about this guy being gross and opening the door in his towel while she goes there. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you can build up a friendly rapport with someone that you work with or talk to a lot, even if you never met them. I have, but it just seems a little odd that she would just out of nowhere tell this Dawn Pliszka about Steven Avery. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that Dawn Pliszka is reliable as a witness? I kind of don't think she is very credible. All right, so you never met her face to face at all? No. So your relationship with her, when you say you were close, it was just from phone conversations. From phone conversations, yes. And these phone conversations were usually just a couple of minutes or so, as you would because you had other duties, other calls coming in and all of that. Yes. Okay, so you didn't really know much personally about her, other than what would be transmitted in these very brief phone calls. Yes. All right. Now, this phone call that you got on October 31st, you knew the name, you recognized the name, Jonda, right? That's what I could make out, okay, from what he had said. And in fact, he didn't answer she didn't answer the question if she knew that it was Jonda or that it was Avery. All right. So, and in fact, when the man gave you the address and it was on Avery Road, right? Yes. And you knew that Jonda's phone's ringing. And you knew that the Jondas and the Averys were basically the same people, same area, right? No, I did not. You didn't. No. Were you interviewed by an investigator Wiegert of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department about this incident? I'm not sure. I believe so. Okay, let's say about 8 or 9 on November 3rd. That would be Thursday. Do you remember getting a call from an investigator at the Sheriff's Department? Yes. Yes? Yes. And he asked you some questions of what you knew about the call on the 31st of October. Yes. And did you tell him that you knew that the Jondas are basically the Avery brothers, that they have done work for them before, but does not know why they give the name B, Jonda? Did you tell them that? No, I did not. And so if he wrote in his report, he was just making it up. Oh, wow. So she said to Wiegert, investigator Wiegert, that she knew the Jondas were basically the Avery brothers. So, like the Dassey. Oh, well, that's Dassey. But Jondas, Dasseys, Averys, they're all the same. All right, so yeah, so she told the Wiegert that, and he's impeaching her with her own statement to law enforcement. So she doesn't remember saying that. So if he wrote that in his report, he was just making it up. I did not know that it was. Teresa told me it was the Avery brothers. At the time I took the call, I had no idea who it was. Okay, Exhibit 17 in front of you there has an account number, right? Yes, that's the Avery account, isn't it? I believe that was the one that I had just created for this lead. So you created this for a whole new account because I couldn't find it in the records. I checked by phone number and the last name, and I couldn't find the person in there or him in there. I'm going to show you Exhibit 19. See if maybe this refreshes your recollection a little bit. Is that one of the appointment sheets that you or somebody in your office prepares and faxes to the photographers? Yes. And at the very, very top, there's a little code that says run by. Yes. And it says D. Pliszka. That would be you, right? Yes. So you actually ran this report yourself. In this particular instance, September 19th, 2005. right? Yes. And the very first name listed there is Tom Jonda, is it not? Yes, it is. And the address there, would you read that off, please? I'm sorry, I can't see. I'm sorry. 12930A Avery Road. Is that the same address that you have had, or that you have here on Exhibit 17, the photo shoot that you filled out on October 31st? Yes. So on October 31st, you did, in fact, know, or those were records, that you had taken an appointment for the Jondas on a prior date. That's not specific or necessarily from me. There were 3 or 4 of us that would run appointment photos. It would depend. I ran the reports in the morning. I didn't necessarily read them thoroughly. I just would fax them out to the photographer. Attorney Buting says, if you would look at the screen here. Okay, whatever. Wait, where's the question? All right, question. And that is, it doesn't indicate that you ran that. Whatever report they're talking about. And Dawn says, I ran the report, but that does not mean that I had taken the original lead. Sure, but you ran the report, and the report included Tom Jonda, the very first one, very same phone number, very same address that you have in front of you on October 31st exhibit, correct? No, the phone number is different. All right, but the address is the same. Yes, but I didn't search by address in the system. You just searched by phone? Right, because we had to try to get people off the phone as quickly as possible. So if I couldn't find it by phone number and last name, and for some reason it didn't come up in the system for some reason, but it should have, because you did have a record of Jondas, right? From what that is, yes. So there you go. Okay, and I realize it's been a long time, so you may not remember everything as well 15 months later, but the record speaks for itself. What was that? Oh, my dog is squealing. She's dreaming. It sounded like a squeaky toy at first to me. I don't know if you guys heard it. It's just quiet. All right, so Attorney Kratz, I'm going to object to this. It's argumentative. It says Tom Jonda, not B, not the phone number. She answered this. It's argumentative. The court says, I don't know if it's argumentative, but the last thing the attorney said was a statement, not a question. Buting says, I will move on. Sorry, Judge. Okay. Buting continues. Now, you say that the same day appointments that would be called in were unusual. Yes. Now that's the bus. I don't know if you heard that, but man, buses here are loud. There's a bus that stops right next door to our house every day, multiple times a day, so it's just annoying. All right, so not that unusual, though they happen, right? Yes, they did. You have a form that's made for that purpose, or for reshoots, if someone had already had a photo that same. So particular, that was her answer. Or for photo shoots, if someone had already had a photo, the same, She trails off. Question. So particularly, repeat customers who knew the photographer's route, knew what day they would be in the area. Those are the kinds of people that would call the same day. They knew they could still get in before the deadline. Sometimes people just weren't aware of the deadlines, and they would see. We could also have ran it for a week without a photo and just extended his ad as well. Okay, so when you got this phone call, though that morning, there was nothing that unusual about it, about getting this call from this gentleman saying he wanted a photograph taken of the car. Was there? No. Okay, and you just followed your regular routine, which is to call. In this case, Teresa, leave a message with the name, address, see if she was available, right? I left the name and the phone number and the address, yeah. If she could make it, that would be great. If not, we would always call the customer back, and he was scheduled for the next week after. And that's something that had been done, that she had done before, right? Yes. You had done the same day once with her, right? Yes. And in your experience, it also would not be unusual that the person calling may not be the person who actually owned and was selling the vehicle, correct? Yes. In fact, that very day, October 31st, there was a gentleman that called in, left the name Sipple, I believe. Does that ring a bell? No, it does not. Well, you sent it out. Okay. Let me do this. Let me mark this as exhibit. Okay, can you identify exhibit 20 for us? Please. This is one of the leads that would have printed because it was done before 24 hours. That would have been one of her normally scheduled leads for the day of the 31st. Okay, and that was run by you? Yes, once again. I think that's the end of her. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys got a little sneak peek of Dawn Pliszka. If you want to continue reading her testimony, I encourage you to download the link in the bottom of my, or in my video description, to the transcript itself. There's a lot of stuff in here. We're going to move on finally to Joellen Zipperer. I'm going to read a little bit of her testimony. Again, not all of it. I just want to see who was. Hold on, let me do this. Joellen Zipperer called as a witness, and we've got Attorney Kratz. That's who I thought would be doing it. I just wanted to make sure. So Kratz is going to be doing the direct examination, and this is Mrs. Zipperer. So whoops, I gotta take Dawn off the screen. Now we're going to listen to Joellen Zipperer. Say that 10 times fast. She is also a state witness. This is day 2, still continuing on with day 2, February 13th, 2007. So, Mrs. Zipperer, can you tell me, or can you tell the jury if you remember what this young lady was wearing? She was wearing a dark jacket, waist length. I think she had jeans, and she had brown hiking boots. Hiking shoes, not hiking shoes, not boots. They were shoes. All right. When you had contact with this young lady, how long was it that you spoke with her? About 15 minutes she was there. After taking the pictures, or after finishing her business there, can you tell me what she did? She came to talk to me with some papers. She told me that I should give them to my husband and she should look them over. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to read that part. I believe there's more here. Yeah. All right. So now Attorney Kratz is continuing on. Ms. Zipperer, after speaking with this young woman, did she tell you where she was going, where she was heading next? No, she didn't. How long was she there? About 15 minutes. This young lady seem upset to you? No. How was her demeanor? In other words, how did she act towards you? She was very nice. She was very pleasant and friendly. She smiled. A couple things we talked about. She smiled. Now, prior to her arrival, Mrs. Zipperer, do you recall receiving a phone call from this young lady? That day? Yes. She left a message that she was having trouble finding our house, but I was outside, so I didn't hear it until later, after she was gone, but she found the place. She just told me that she was having trouble finding it, and then she asked me if that was the right house. I said yes, and she asked me if it was okay if we took a picture of the car, and then I showed her how to get to it. And then she went by herself to take the picture. When she told you that she found the place, or when she indicated that she had been lost before she got there, did she indicate how long she was looking for your residence, or how long she had called you before she got there? Anything like that? No, she didn't. Now, was this vehicle that you were selling or somebody else's? It's my grandson selling it. And I think that was it for direct examination for her. And now we're going into cross with Dean Strang, who is the second to the right of the making a murderer photo up there. The trial thumbnail, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. All right, so now we're going on a cross-examination. Let me find where I need to start. Okay. So I guess mid-afternoon could have been 2:30 possibly. Could have been? Oh, wait, no. That was in the evening I heard it. Oh, the message. I'm sorry, this is a strange place. Nods of heads don't work. Okay, whatever. He was telling her not to nod. So she listened to the message in the evening. And then so Dean Strang says, so I guess mid-afternoon could have been 2:30 possibly. Could have been. Could have been 3. Could have been. Could have been 3:30 or a little after that, something like that, but sometime in the middle of the afternoon. Yes, and this is all very important as it goes to timeline. We have issues with timeline and where Teresa may have been versus, what people are saying. So, could have been later afternoon. Yes, and that's the best you can do for us today. Yes. Okay, fair enough. And what sort of yard work was keeping you busy that afternoon? I was outside raking. So it's the kind of thing where either you weren't wearing a watch or you weren't worrying about time. No, I don't wear a watch. Now, your address is actually on County Highway B? Right, County Highway B. Okay, Mr. Kratz may have asked you this, and I was jotting a note and maybe didn't hear it, but if you continue going north on County Road B, do you come to Highway 147, right? Not too far away, right? It's about 10 minutes from my house to the north of B, right? Yes. And if you go left on 147, but before too long, do you come to the Avery Auto Salvage on your left? I don't know where that is. I was never there. Okay, all right. Are you at County Road B and Highway 147? Is that roughly the Mishicot area? Yes. And you are pretty sure, or pretty much, you are pretty much due north of the city of Manitowoc. Right. All right. Now, you didn't see from which direction this young woman came to your house. No, I didn't. You didn't see which direction she left your house from. I did not. Okay, you came in for supper time. I did. Yes, back to the house. Yes. And your husband George came home. Yes. Your grandson. This was his car. Yes. His son, or his name is Jason. Yes. He was home too? I'm not sure when he came home. Sometime that evening, or in any event, he stays with you. Yes. Okay. Were you there nearby on the evening of November 3rd, 3 days after this, Thursday, November 3rd, sometime shortly after supper when your husband George got a telephone call from a sheriff's detective? I could have been. Do you remember that call? I think so. Actually, and then later on in the... What does that say? Later on in the evening, pretty late, about 9:40 at night, a second call came in from the sheriff's detective. Yes. Someone in Calumet County both times. Do you remember that? I don't remember which one it was, but George was on the phone both times. Yes. And the first one, do you remember George raising his voice and getting angry? At the first one? Yes. He could have. When you say he could have, I'm wondering whether you remember that or that it just sounds like something George might do on a bad day. Yes, he does raise his voice sometimes. Do you remember that occasion when the sheriff's detective called from Calumet and George raised his voice on the phone? Judge, I'm sorry. Why can't I read that? There we go. I didn't know that Mrs. Zipperer was involved in this call. Did she testify that she knew who was on the call? Yes, I believe she did. Right. Okay. So, Ms. Zipperer, you weren't on the phone call yourself. No. But you were near George on his end. I mean, you were in the room or near George while he was on the phone. I could have been in the house. I don't remember exactly which call. I don't listen always to what he talks about. I ignore my husband. But do you remember a time when there was a great deal of news about Teresa Halbach being missing? Yes. All right. So this would have been that very night that it first made the news, 3 days after she was at your house. That Thursday. Do you have that? Yes. Evening in your mind? Yes. And I take it it's not often that a detective calls from the sheriff's department to your home. No. Do you remember hearing your husband George, after he raised his voice into the telephone, threatening that he was going to call his attorney? Attorney Kratz says, I'm going to object. This is clearly hearsay. The court says, Mr. Strang. Mr. Strang says, I'm not offering it for the truth. I'm offering it for the fact that it was said. The court says, I'm not sure I discern the difference you are offering it for because of the fact it was said. Dean Strang says, yeah, the verbal acts. In fact, I intend to show these were not the truth. We're not being offered for the truth. The court says, well, let's step back a second. Foundationally, I know that witness testified about being aware of some calls, but I'm not sure if I'm tracking that she remembers a specific caller being there. So why don't you step back? Attorney Strang says, sure, that's fair enough. All right. By Attorney Strang continuing his questioning, and I understand this is a better part of the year and a half ago, but do you remember I had to switch because it was hurting my eyes. It's better with the light color. Do you remember your husband receiving a call on Thursday evening, November 3rd, which was the night that the news first reported Teresa missing? I don't remember a specific date, no. Do you remember the phone call that I'm describing? I remember him talking to someone, but I don't know. I don't know when. Okay. The court reporter couldn't hear that. I don't know if I know who he was talking to. Dog needs a blanket break. She always she'll come right up to me and be like, I'm ready for my blanket. And then she gets warm and she peeks her little nose out and her head. Eventually, like, she slides herself out. And then she gets cold and then she wants to go back under the blanket. So all day I deal with that. All right. I started it, though. My boyfriend says I created it. It's probably true. All right, so where was I? I'm not asking for the name of the other person. I understand you weren't on the phone, but this is the night that he would have received two separate phone calls from an investigator. Attorney Kratz says, Judge, I'm going to object. I want to be heard outside the presence of the jury. Counsel is testifying. Court says, all right, we'll excuse the jury for a few minutes. And then jury is not present now. So, all right, Mr. Kratz. Attorney Kratz says, thank you, Judge. This is clearly a hearsay, and counsel injecting the facts in front of this jury, making comments like this is the night that the two investigators called you, not only calls for a hearsay response, but Mr. Strang is offering the testimony in lieu of his witness, or this witness. I don't see any exception to the hearsay rule. It is for the truth of the matter asserted, even if Mr. Strang's relevancy, if there is any, is the fact that an investigator called suggesting the fact that it was an investigator on the phone elicits that hearsay response. It is improper, Judge. Court says, Mr. Strang. Mr. Strang says, why don't we excuse the witness so that we're not tainting her testimony by my response? The court says, all right. Ms. Zipperer, can you step out in the hall for a minute? And she does. Mr. Strang, thank you. First of all, I am leading the witness. This being cross-examination, I'm suggesting to her the answer. The basis of good faith, or the basis, a good faith basis for the questions is indisputable. I have one report from Corporal Lemieux of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department documenting her phone call, and we read through that. We read through Lemieux's, a lot of her report, her initial report anyways. So she doesn't give a time of the actual call. She only tells us that about 5 on Thursday, November 3rd, 2005, is when she begins working on a missing persons investigation and then writes a report that sort of logs her activities that evening. One of them being a call with Mr. Zipperer in which he becomes belligerent on the telephone. So he becomes belligerent with the sheriff? Was she the sheriff? Lemieux? No, Corporal Lemieux. I don't know. She's a corporal, whatever that is in rankings. I have no idea. But anyways, so she is the one that called, apparently, Mr. Zipperer, and he was belligerent. And then I have the report of Investigator John Dettering of a Calumet County Sheriff's Department documenting his call later that same evening. He places the call at approximately 9:40 p.m. on Thursday, November 3rd, 2005. He describes verbatim. His report says George was extremely belligerent initially and goes on from there. I don't intend to offer Mr. Zipperer's comments for the truth. Indeed, the intent is to show that Mr. Zipperer told first Corporal Lemieux and then Investigator Dettering a series of lies about his own activities, about Jason's activities, about whether the Auto Trader photographer was a trespasser on the property, threatened to have the dog eat anyone who comes on the property, wanting Teresa Halbach arrested even after being told that she was a missing person, denying that he had contacted Auto Trader or arranged for photographs of the car. Whew, whoa now. That was amazing. I wish he could just say that to the jury. So what I'm interested in is eliciting, not for the truth, but as relevant verbal acts, these statements that I believe she would have overheard. Mr. Kratz? Mr. Kratz's rebuttal says, Judge, the fact that Mr. Strange has to ask this witness who she was talking to, that alone calls for hearsay response, so there isn't any foundation. But the relevance, even if there was hearsay exception to the fact that Mr. Zipperer flies off the handle or indicates... I didn't close all these bubbles. It's annoying, sorry. Alright, so Mr. Zipperer flies off the handle or indicates that Ms. Halbach was a trespasser or some other reason I fail to see, and for both of those reasons would ask that this question be excluded. Attorney Strang says, now she herself meets with Investigator Dettering later that evening at what he marks as 9:53 p.m. So he physically then comes to the residence. Investigator Dettering does. He talks with her as well as her husband. So again, that's why I believe she's there. And that's the background. The court says, I think I understand your objection to the hearsay exception, being that you are not offering the statements for the truth of the matter asserted, but what's the relevance? Attorney Strange says, the issue here is whether the people investigating Teresa's death investigated without bias, investigated objectively, sort of followed the evidence where it led them. When somebody who was essentially evenly placed with Mr. Avery, that is both known to be appointments on the afternoon that Teresa Halbach is last seen, when that person becomes belligerent and uncooperative with the police, continues to be bellicose and uncooperative. What does that mean? When told that there is a missing person and that the police need help, and then tells the police a series, not one, not two, but a whole series of lies. It's irrelevant to whether the police then pursued that and said, gosh, we have somebody who would have been one of the last people to see her, and he's saying to us about everything that's coming out of his mouth. He is hostile. He is uncooperative. Perhaps he is worthy of some further investigation. I intend to show later, in fact, Mr. Zipperer got little or no further investigation. Mr. Kratz says he can ask the police, then that, Judge, it shouldn't come in through Ms. Zipperer or call George Zipperer. I don't know what I need to, Strang says in response, I don't know that I need to call witnesses to do this. Now, if he would rather I ask the police, and objectively, if Mr. Zipperer really does not remember her husband's end of the conversation, then I will do it with Investigator Dettering. I mean, I'm not, the court says, is the investigator going to be testifying for the state? He's right outside the judge. He is probably going to be next witness. Actually, I never even saw Dettering's testimony. I don't think he does. All right, so the court says, given how little the witness appears to remember about the conversation, I'm not sure that it's necessary for the court to rule on the objection. And if we have got other people here who are firsthand, maybe Mr. Strang, if they say something that you feel this witness somehow might be in position to clear up, you can consider bringing her back. But I don't see at this stage, based on what I've heard so far, that she remembers enough about it to offer anything probative. Strang says, and I will understand completely and entirely, except Mr. Kratz's polite refusal to answer this question, but I will ask. I will put it to the court, and the court will require Mr. Kratz, if it wishes, whether the state expects to call Corporal Lemieux. Attorney Kratz says, I don't know. Ms. Zipperer is not done, and I have some questions as well. So, and the court says, is Ms. Zipperer scheduled to be testifying? Kratz says Mr. Zipperer. Kratz says he's on the witness list. I don't intend to call him. It would be cumulative for what Ms. Zipperer is saying. The court says, well, at any rate, at this stage, Ms. Zipperer doesn't need to remember enough about the conversation. I think it's time to move on. Attorney Strang says, and that's fair. And I understand I can do this through Investigator Dettering. I didn't have anything else for Ms. Zipperer, so I can pass this back to redirect when the jury, okay, very well, is called back. Mr. Kratz, do you have any questions? Just since Mr. Strang brought up her memory about the last, I should take that off. There's nobody on the, well, Jolene's not on right now. All right, so, since Attorney Kratz says, since Strang brought up her memory about the time, she does have a written statement about that. The court says, all right, we'll bring that jury back in. We can bring the witness back in. Mr. Strang, I will ask you for a second when the jury comes back in if you have any further questions. Sure. All right, jury's present. The court says you may be seated. Mr. Strang, do you have any further questions for this witness? He says, I do not have any further questions on cross-examination. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Kratz has a little bit of redirect. So let's see what he's got to say. All right, so Ms. Zipperer, after Teresa Halbach went missing, do you recall being interviewed yourself by an investigator with the Calumet County Sheriff's Department whose name was John Dettering? I don't remember his name, but I was interviewed. A bald fellow remember being interviewed by. I can't remember if he was bald. All right, Mr. Strang, Asked if today you recall the approximate time that Teresa was at your residence, and I believe Mr. Strang, you indicated that it was sometime in the afternoon, sometime in the later afternoon. Is that what you told him today, mid-afternoon? Do you recall providing Investigator Dettering with a written statement wherein you indicated the time that Teresa was out at your property? I remember that day. Yes. Do you remember what you wrote in that statement? Not everything. If I showed you that statement, would that help refresh your memory about the time that she was there? Right. I think I have to have my other glasses, though. I'm sorry. Julie has my reading glasses. Okay. So we'll get those. I'm sorry. Now, Ms. Zipperer, I don't want to say anything, but I want you to just look at your written statement. That's exhibit number 28 that's been put in front of you. I want you to just read it to yourself. Ms. Zipperer, my associate, is going to take that exhibit from you, going to take that away, and now I'm going to ask you if, after reading that statement, if that refreshes your recollection about when Teresa was out to visit you that day. Yes, it does. And what time, then, was she out to see you that day? Between 2 and 2:30. Attorney Kratz says, that's all I've got. And then a quick recross. The piece of paper, by Attorney Strang, the piece of paper that the prosecution just showed you that actually was something written by the police officer, correct? Right. I just told him and he wrote it down. He wrote it down and then you signed it at the bottom. Yes. And you wrote the date on it. Yes. And that was, 6 days or so after the young woman had come to your house. I don't remember the date that was on there. Okay, it was November 6th. And you don't have any reason to doubt that, do you? No. Okay. And when police officer asked you about time, what were you doing today? Which is giving your best estimate of when this young woman showed up while you were raking leaves in your yard. No, probably I was, that was right, because I just couldn't remember right because that, what exactly time it was. Okay. But as I understood, you don't wear a watch. No, I don't. You weren't wearing a watch on Halloween 2005. No. You were in the yard raking leaves, right? And at that time, do you remember whether he suggested 2 or 2:30, or do you know why he wrote that down? That's what I thought it was that day. And as you sit here today, is that your best recollection, or mid-afternoon? That was on the paper, 2 or 2:30. Okay, you're going to go with the paper. Right. Okay, thank you. So the defense pretty much lost that one. The witness wanted to stick with their original statement, even though they changed their statement a bit. That was Joellen Zipperer. Both Joellen and Pliszka, Dawn Pliszka, in my eyes, are not very credible witnesses. I mean, I don't know, especially Dawn Pliszka. It seems like she's a gossiper and wants to be friends with everybody, and it's like, yeah, we were great friends, but really they weren't. That's my take of it. Anyways, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I know these are lengthy documents and they can be long and boring sometimes at points, but thank you so much for sticking with me. And I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye now.
If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.